Welcome to Solid No More, where we have the conversations most people avoid. Tonight's topic, ego versus growth. It's one of the quietly affecting relationships everywhere because somewhere along the way, feedback stopped feeling like support and started feeling like an attack. So the question is, are we growing together or just defending ourselves against one another? This is a real conversation. Different perspectives are welcome. Respect is required. And with that being said, let's welcome our panelists to the show. Hey, good evening.
How you doing?
Hey, we can start out with Damien. You going first and introducing yourself, and then we'll go over with Elena and work ourselves from there.
All right, I'm Damien Lovia. I'm retired Air Force. Currently, last 10 years have been training the United States military how to survive high pressure situations and making sure they understand what policy says and how to do that in a high pressure situation.
Well, and hello, everyone. I'm Elena Rodriguez. I'm out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm the president of Prospera TV Network, but I am the founder of Show Your Crown Enterprises, and I help people build their dreams.
Jamaal, help us out.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jamaal Marshall, the CEO and founder of Listen and Speak LLC, top podcast host, and executive coach. So I work in brain neuroplasticity and the subconscious mind.
Go ahead.
I'm Jessica Montalvo, and my background is in education. I've been in various different capacities for 20 plus years, but I'm also CEO and founder of Flairway Boutique, which is a vintage-inspired accessory boutique, and then also a host of my upcoming show called Grace Anyway.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yara Ortiz, financial consultant and personal financial coach, owner and CEO of BCS, Bookkeeping Consulting Services, as well as the founder of Money Moves, and I help people boss off their money.
All right, awesome. Welcome. Thank everyone for having you. I'm glad that everyone's able to make it tonight. And we're going to kind of just jump right in. And the first question I have for the panel was, when does feedback cross the line from helpful to harmful? And if Yara, if you'll take that first, and then we'll follow up with Jamaal.
Sure. So for me, feedback becomes harmful when it attacks the person instead of addressing the behavior. And when it's not coming from a place of wanting to build the person, but from a frustration or from confusion, just pointing out things, especially when it's delivered with blame. So you can feel the difference at that point, and it's not feeling like support, right? It starts to feel kind of personal. And for me also, it crosses the line when it's constant, when it's noting, when nothing is acknowledged and everything is criticized instead, and you start feeling like you can never get anything right. And once someone feels that way, I believe they just switch to protecting themselves. And feedback should be clear, but respectful and honest. It should be also honest but thoughtful.
So, yeah, I get it. So what you're saying is basically feedback is good, but make sure to a point that you have to provide some pros, not just cons all the time, and outline some positivities versus negatives as well.
Exactly, and the delivery as well.
Sounds great. Jamaal, what do you have to add or say different to that?
Got it. Great question, by the way. Feedback is harmful when the intent is to malign. I don't think a lot of feedback is actually great feedback if it's constructive criticism. And if it's one warranted and two asked for. Sometimes there's unsolicited advice. It's like, I didn't ask for that. Sometimes it can be a bit more forthcoming than is required. But when the intent is to malign, like Yara said, when it can be constant, that way it's trying to break the person down psychologically, which can also break them down physically. So I think it can be helpful to answer the first part of your question when it's done to build a person up. Even on the podcast, I say let's get into it, not to break someone down, but to build them up. And so when it's designed to build, it can be great. There's even an ancient scripture that says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. So you can actually faithfully give someone feedback, even if it may seem a little hurtful. I'd rather someone who comes alongside of me that wants to see me win versus someone who's coming to give me tons of criticism to break me down. So that's when it goes from helpful to harmful. If it's designed to see the person win, to see them sharper, to see them actually move forward, to see them actually excel in their industry or wherever their sphere of influence, let's go for it. But if the intent from the heart and the mind and the psychology is to break someone down, then at some point that needs to be shut down. I hope that's helpful.
No, absolutely. So let me just ask the question, because you said at some point it needs to be shut down. So would you say the concept as far as for destroy and rebuild may be a little bit too much, or not necessarily destroy, but maybe something a little less aggressive, I would say?
I love your choice of words. I mean, you have to break down to build up. But again, depending on who the person is, feedback is often received from someone, who has the intent to build. And if someone's operating from a place of security, they stay in that state of flow. If they're operating from a place of fear, and there are leaders who have a lot of fear in them, they will look to break down, because that is how you incite not just fear, but also how you begin to gain control and let someone else be drawn to.
Great point. Great point. Jessica, you look like you're ready to jump in there. What you got?
Yeah, I agree with what has been said so far. I truly believe that there's a time and place for everything. And I think that's where you have to, trust yourself enough to know if you have created a safe space for someone to be able to have those tough conversations, because not everyone is well equipped with the tools that they need in order to receive. Some people, have had really tough upbringings, and they think that everything is criticism. And, so I think it really just depends on your situation, and then trusting yourself to know whether or not the other person is going to receive something positively or negatively.
So great point, Jessica. So you mentioned trust yourself. You said that a couple of times. So what will be an identifier, I guess, if you do trust yourself, or something that identifies that, something that you should be looking out for?
For me, it's totally the vibe. And I think that as we go through our life journeys, we understand that vibe even more as we have our experiences. Yes, I have messed up, many times before, but I've also had some successes too with the relationships that I've had. And then, you learn from them. So I think for me, it's all about the vibe and knowing whether or not you can actually have a real conversation with someone. Because if someone is closed off, they're going to show you that wall, whether they retaliate with, harsh words, or whether they're open to listening and receiving what it is that you have to say.
Well said. Elena, what you have to contribute to that?
Well, I think the difference from going helpful to harmful, coming from a place of really being beat down emotionally, sometimes I think it's if you've asked for it also. Like if there's a negative feedback coming, did I even ask for it? Did I want an opinion right now? If it's coming in a positive way, then I think it would be, well received or appreciated. But this topic is very passionate to me because of all the years I was in a really kind of beat down. So to me, the first place I go is a negative when I'm thinking of feedback, because that's how it was delivered to me again and again. But I also know that we all listen with our ears, or we all hear like with our ears, but we truly listen with our emotions. And so sometimes it's that personal healing that needs to happen to realize that not everything is an attack. Not everything is meant to be harmful. So I think it's kind of a personal issue too, on how you are choosing to receive it. And that can just come from patterns or years of emotional abuse as well.
Man, that's a great point. So just to recap on, you said the negative of the feedback. Would you say there was a certain point when you start to identify that you noticed the negative first and only, or was there a point when you started to see both sides, or what point and what triggered you to identify with that?
Yeah.
Me? Oh, go ahead.
For me, I know that in the beginning, it didn't come like that. But after a while, like you don't even realize you're starting to come into this space of full negativity, and then once you do, you kind of become a changed person. And so even though it's been years since I've been out of it, that's the first place I still go. I always think somebody's coming at me. I quickly go into defense mode, protective mode. So it's something I have to work on myself, and it's a conscious choice, like every day, because I really think people are coming at me, and I have to just remind myself that it's not harmful, it's not hurtful. That's not why they're saying what they're saying, but that's my own trauma. Like that's my own trigger.
Okay, Jessica, I'm gonna let you reply. Let me get Damien in there real quick before he forget his thoughts. He's got that gray hair showing, so we're gonna make sure he got his.
Yeah, I think it becomes harmful when the person providing the feedback, the sender, is oblivious to the things that were said. When we don't recognize that person is not ready for it, that person is starting to pull back, and when the sender doesn't realize that and doesn't realize that, hey, I need to adjust or maybe pull back, maybe they're not ready, or maybe I need to change my words, maybe my tone. When we're oblivious to that, I think that's when it becomes harmful, because then we're not helping at that point, possibly for a lot of the reasons that have already been stated.
Okay, Jessica, you want to reattack?
Yeah, I wanted to just piggyback off of what Elena was saying, is that a little bit of background is I came from an abusive family. So when you're constantly criticized about a lot of different things, I didn't become aware until I became a mom. And it was then that you're kind of faced with yourself, your baggage, and your trauma and everything, and you realize so many things. And for me, that awareness, it just came naturally, and it like suddenly. So I think that was where I was kind of faced with myself to, okay, take ownership of every part that I've played in every single piece of life experience that I've had, and why I react the way that I do and everything. So I think it's one of those things where once you do become aware, then you know that there's a healing process that has been initiated. And then throughout the progression, then you kind of become more aware of where your triggers are. And it helps. I mean, it's very helpful, because then you understand people more, you understand yourself more, and it doesn't come as harsh as it used to.
No, I agree. I definitely think once you start the healing process itself is when you can start to identify. It's a great point that you put out there. Elena, so let me ask you a quick question. Why do people get defensively so quick? Would you say it's ego, protection, or projection?
Oh gosh, probably all three. For me, I get defensive real quick because I already feel like there's pain on the other side. I just know what that, they always say that anger isn't the actual emotion, it's the reaction to pain. And so I know that for me, if I feel like I'm, if somebody's coming at me, I just assume that they're putting me down, or that it's a bad thing. And I like come up with hands up, like I'm ready to go. And it's I don't know if that would be ego, or if it's just me trying to protect myself from any more pain. But it's probably a little bit of all. A
little bit of all. Would you say that it has something also to do with possibly not healing from some past traumas or triggers that are still causing you to react?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I have a whole lot of them. um, but I'm working on them. I work on them every day. But
Hey, you
it's
got a
just
coach like myself or Jamaal down there. We can help you out with that.
God has been helping me out with that. But no, the reality is, when you grow up wanting to do a good job, like I'm a people pleaser. I wanted to do a good job for my dad to like be proud of me. And so when you are naturally this like people pleaser, even in your relationships, you want to do a good job. You want the man to be happy. And if the man is coming back and like, being a jerk about things, and then you take it personally, it's like, I don't know, it could be ego that's like, why am I not good enough? Or just pain, but I still have to work on that. I still naturally think somebody's coming at me, and then I have to like pause and be like, they're not coming at you. What's really going on here? So it's a process.
No, absolutely. That's good though. I mean, because one of the things that you identified was there's a pause. And so therefore, you're conscious of what's going on and then trying to make corrective measures. Jamaal, so what do you would you like me to repeat the question, or are you good?
It'll be helpful if you repeat so I can
Absolutely,
answer
sir.
it.
Why do people get defensive so quickly? Is it ego, protection, or projection?
It depends on the person. It would be an indictment if I named one over the other or said there was all three, because every person has a unique fingerprint given by God and a unique psychology. Also, different backgrounds, different frames of references, different forms of trauma. Or if I can take the T word out, because I think a lot of times people in the psychology space tend to overuse that word, where we become inoculated to the weight of it and it loses its meaning. Sometimes people haven't had a traumatic experience. They're just things that have stockpiled that they've never dealt with. And so if that is the case from person to person, it can be interchangeable. And I'll use a C word that I think some of us typically tend to deal with, whether type A or type B, but control. I cannot control the outcome. I cannot control this person. And when I feel like I'm out of control, I must go on the defensive. And if I can defend, if I can clap back, if I can sort of build the case of I am not what people think I am, then I can come out on top. And there's a place of psychological surrender, not surrender to someone slandering you or coming at you or being critical of you, but surrendering to giving up controlled outcomes that actually makes life a lot easier. That's when you enter into the quantum field. And not a lot of people are even doing that work. And so I would say one primary reason is control. It's because they cannot control the person, even if it's unsolicited advice. And even the most laid back of us. I mean, you and I've been getting to know each other pretty well, Jamaal. You can tell I'm a type B. I'm just as easygoing as they are. We can control through charm, or we can control through excellence or people pleasing. It's like if we don't kick up the dust or trouble the waters, then we can also control the people around us. And when that's quote unquote not good enough, that's when you see the quote unquote snake under the grass. It's like, oh,
No,
I still couldn't control you, and I did everything right, and I said everything right, and I made the money, I made the clients, I made the house what it was, and yet somehow you still have an issue with that. Now you're gonna get my bad side coming out, and so I think this is where I'm actually trying to answer this holistically to encompass different personality types, because it's going to manifest itself different with different people.
Absolutely, I agree. That's why I like and invest in the disc consulting part of what I do. I like it because understanding the different personalities and different aspects of, from where people come from and in totality, how that shapes and navigate what they're doing today, and being able to educate that to people, because a lot of people are unaware of that. Yara, would you say people are reacting to tone or truth? What would you say? Or did you want to?
Well, it could be both. It's depending again, like Jamal said, who it's coming from. But people sometimes get triggered quickly because they feel personal. They hit a trigger, right? So when they hit a trigger, could be insecurities, past experiences, moment where they already felt judged or not enough. So sometimes, yes, it is a tone, the timing, and how it's been said. So instead of really hearing the message, their mind goes straight into protection mode and putting those guard up. So when people feel like they have to protect themselves, they just stop listening. They're just not registering anymore, and they start just reacting. And once that happens, I feel like the conversation shift from understanding to defending, and that's where the communication starts to break down.
So one of the things, the common denominators that keep popping up is who it's coming from. So I guess we pick and choose, right? It's subjective because who it's coming from, if you're at work or you're in a place of administration or some type of authority, you're going to listen. But if it's at home in your own dwellings, you're going to pick and choose, I guess, when to get an attitude and kind of turn it on to not like the actual message or the sender that's sending the message. So it sounded kind of like we kind of all over the place and just don't talk to me like that kind of thing. Damien, what do you think? Hold on. I'll come back to you, Elena. Damien, go ahead. Share what you got.
Yeah, I think kind of what you said, if I'm at home and my wife is giving me some feedback, I know she's coming from a good place. If I'm at work, I'm analyzing, okay, what's their angle, first and foremost, and then you have the tone, what's the tone like, what's the truth. And I think, some of the opposite side of the coin too, we've mentioned a lot of trauma, like maybe it's emotional neglect, that triggers us, but opposite side of the coin, what if you have somebody that didn't have any emotional neglect? They had a good upbringing, but they were never told or given any feedback or allowed to just have an opinion and never, given constructive criticism. And I think that control is not so much the control of the person, but they just can't control the situation to where they've never experienced that. They've never experienced somebody giving them that feedback where they've been allowed to just say what they want to say and never, again, with that constructive feedback. So I think there's two sides of the spectrum. I think so far, from what I've heard, is a lot of, the trauma, but I think there's that opposite side of the spectrum too, where they don't have control of the situation, where now somebody's giving them constructive feedback and maybe they're not used to that.
Maybe they're not used to boundaries and somebody's now establishing boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe that's one thing too, as well, as a lot of people may have been given the, advantageous to roam as freely as they want to. And then now engaging with somebody else. They're saying, hey, look, there's parameters. You just can't do what you want to do. Jessica, what do you have to offer?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think, it really just depends on the situation. And I hear you, Damien, especially at work, being in your, field for 20 plus years. You've been around the block and have experienced so many different things. So it's definitely a different setting. And the experiences, emotions, and everything, of course, for me within education, they've been all over the place. And I think the deeper you get into your field, your area of expertise, the more that, you see where there might be, holes that need to be filled that you feel that need to be filled in certain ways. And you have no control over those things. So I think, yes, there's that aspect of, the emotional aspect that you kind of bring to the table when you're really passionate about something. And you want to instill change, but that you can only go so far with certain things. So, I mean, I get what everybody's saying. That's for sure.
No doubt. Elena, go ahead. You have some more to add on to it.
Yeah, I kind of had a question, like on the feedback. Do you think that it matters? Like, if we're going to talk relationships, do you think that it matters how soon feedback comes? Like, do you think that you have to already be establishing like an intimate level of trust to know that feedback is coming from a good place, whereas maybe you're just starting to date and somebody's offering feedback and you still might be like, well, I didn't ask you. I mean, do you think it determines like how soon feedback starts coming? Does it does it feel safer when there's already an established level of trust there?
Well, so for me, what I'll say is, for me, I think everything is about communication. So the sooner that you start to communicate, the better off you're going to be. If we engage into a conversation or interact, if I'm asking you how you're doing and you're responding, that's a form of feedback. So again, it just becomes subjective to which portion or which form it is of feedback that you're willing to engage into. So again, like Jessica said, it's all about the vibe. So, initially as we're having a conversation and the vibe is going, I think in any relationship, as it's respective and it's welcoming, that you're willing to accept it. And it's like you said, it's coming from a place of a positivity versus negativity. But I think it has to be a conversation here. You can't meet somebody within 15 minutes unless you're in a certain organization where it requires you to make corrections. I don't think that would be something that would be welcome off the top. That's just my opinion. Anybody else have anything off the top?
No, I agree with you guys. It's not how soon or late or whatnot. It's just more about the vibe, right? How you feel has been delivered and how you are perceiving of how the person is actually giving that feedback. If it's really coming from a good place or not, just kind of going by the vibe and feeling your gut, going with your gut.
Okay, I agree with you. You got to go with that gut feeling. Damien, some men say they feel unheard. Jessica, some women say they feel constantly criticized. Where's the disconnect? Damien, you go first.
I think it's the like what we've already established. What is everybody already bringing to the table? Their upbringing, where they, did they have that trauma, that neglect, that overindulgence? What type of parental modeling did they have? Every person is going to be different. You're going to have some men that do want to be heard. I have friends that, if I ask them, hey, let's go golf. Well, let me see what my wife has planned for us. So they kind of just go along with, what the wife's going to set the table, and that works for them, And so I think it just depends on who that person is. And I think what's important is, in a relationship, the two have to have that understanding of what both need. And I think that's what it comes down to. Because I think some men want to be heard, and I think some men are fine just going with the flow.
Let me ask you, the ones that are fine with going with the flow, because we're talking about men's health. Would you say that's a healthy way to go about?
It could be unhealthy. It could be unhealthy because if they're trying to avoid conflict, that's when it's unhealthy. But if just going with the flow allows them to, I'm going to work on my car, I'm going to go do my work on, my thing, then maybe it's not unhealthy. So I wouldn't say it's going to be always one way or the other. Again, I think it's that dynamic of that relationship that's going to make that possibly unhealthy if they're not heard and they want to be heard, but they're avoiding conflict.
Well said. I appreciate that. Jessica.
Oh, real quick. I'm sorry, Jessica. I really try to pride myself on listening. Before Jessica, with the females, I want to just get some full context on this question to really flesh it out, because I think it's more to it than men being unheard. In what context are we speaking here? Because I really want to dig into this.
Oh man, great question. So let's go with the fact that right now in the climate, there's a need, there's a want for spaces for men to come and say, hey, you know what, man, I'm just having a shitty day, man. I need somebody to talk to. Hey, you know what, this relationship isn't going great. I just go with the flow because she's showing potential of being a narcissist, and we've only heard about men being narcissists. So how do I cope and how do I deal with this if this is in fact the case to be?
Okay, Jamaal, my namesake. That's perfect. That's really, really good context. And I want to tackle that because I appreciate what Damien said, and especially as a married man, I love what Corinthians says in ancient, and I know everyone on the sound of my voice may not be a believer or read the Bible or even like the Bible, but Some of the greatest billionaire entrepreneurs who are Muslim, guess what they use? The Bible. So that's what they use. Corinthians 7 actually goes into the different dynamics between single men, single women, and married women. They have different things that they care about, different things that they're subject to. And so I want to speak from a holistic context. Yes, often a married man or married women will defer to their spouse in decision making. I will say this when it comes to not being heard, and that's when it comes to feedback. If you're conflict avoidant and you typically will avoid through your job, through other hobbies, then you build resentment. And where you build resentment, you often will build isolation. I'm not talking about withdrawal. Withdrawal means, hey, I just need a moment to recharge. Isolation means I'm moving further and further and further away from the community or the woman or the man or the person I'm supposed to be around. And when that happens,
explain conflict avoidance.
that means I'm avoiding the conflict with my spouse, partner, community, supervisor, manager, whoever it may be, to have that conversation that needs to be had because I fear I cannot control the outcome. So right there, let's lay that on the table. And when you have that, sometimes that's birthed out of trauma that has not been addressed. And obviously fear is at the foundation of that. You will often move away into isolation. When you're in isolation, you're only left with your own thoughts. And it talks about that even again in the Bible. They're like, what does this do here, Pastor? No, I work in psychology, but this is what I use. I use ancient principles. It says, he who isolates himself seeks his own desire and rages against all wise judgment. And so there are ways that just seem right to you within the framework of your own thinking that are actually damaging you. And so as a man, when you feel like you are not being heard, you will move towards isolation and move towards resentment. And then you also move towards unhealthy habits. So when someone says, you find a person who's an alcoholic, gambling addict, pornography addict, adulterer, it's not that it's their spouse's fault. They just did not have the courage to actually deal with those things and have a healthy outlet. And they found this as an escape route. Instead of escaping right into the messy middle of let's deal with this here on, it's like, I'd rather not even deal with it at all. I'd rather actually numb that pain because our mind will work against us to go out of its way to make us feel safe. That's a false psychological safety that does more damage than it does good. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Jessica, would you like to follow up after that?
Yeah. Could you ask the question again?
Absolutely. Some women say they feel constantly criticized. Some men say they feel unheard. Where would you say the disconnect lies?
Okay. So,
or just answer however you feel.
It's complex. I feel like it's complex. I feel like it's complicated. And the reason for that is I have been in a narcissistic marriage. And I was in that narcissistic marriage for a year and 1 month. And within that time, there was so much damage that was done. And I think trying to understand that, that mentality was something that I was really, really interested in just because I didn't understand his psychology. I didn't understand where he was coming from. And I wanted to, I'm that type of person that wants to justify a behavior that I'm receiving. So I want to be able to understand. But you can't understand a narcissist for the most part. Yeah. So I think that's where it comes in, where it's complicated, because then you're asking questions, to yourself all the time, about relationships. And then you're kind of skewed on what a healthy relationship looks like. So trying to figure out who you are and who you will be in a relationship is just kind of foreign, especially to me. I have been single for 7 years and I have not dated. So relationships is a whole nother ball game, a whole nother conversation for sure.
Okay. Yara, talk to me. What you got?
So I think the disconnect comes down to how things are being experienced on both sides, but not fully understood, right? So some men feel unheard. A lot of times that not because the other person isn't talking. And men correct me if I'm wrong, right? It's not because the other person isn't talking. It's more because they feel like the person is not really present, right? They don't feel like the person is really present. You can tell when someone is listening and to understand versus just waiting for the turn to respond or defend themselves. And after a while, when you have to keep repeating yourself and you have to keep re-explaining how you feel, it gets exhausting because now you are not just communicating, you are trying to convince someone to actually hear you, right? And at the same time, when women say they feel constant criticized, that usually comes from feedback feeling constant and unbalanced, because we may feel diminished, undermined, and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a difference between correction and constant criticism, and I can also speak to that a little bit, like Jessica can relate, because I also do come from a toxic relationship. I was constantly being undermined. I was constantly being diminished, right? And yes, I was not really present in the relationship because how can I be, right?
Right.
Now, when everything gets pointed out or questioned, it doesn't motivate growth. It slowly breaks you down. So you go from trying to improve to then now questioning yourself. And now it starts to opening up a whole other layer of things, especially if there's stuff that hasn't been healed, right? They're still there, whether you know or not, realize it or not, right? And at some point, it starts feeling like support and starts feeling like no matter what I do, it's just never enough for you. So
All
now
right. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So now you have one person feeling unheard, and the other feeling like they can't do anything right, and that's the disconnect. That can be disconnect right there, right? So until both sides feel heard and respected, the conversation is always going to feel tension. There's always going to feel tension, disconnection, instead of that connection should be a balance. But also, again, how is the relationship? What type of relationship it is, right? Is it, in my case, with a narcissist? No, I'm not. I was not present at some point. I clocked out a long time ago. So
That's a great point. I'll double back on that in a minute because she's burning my forehead like she's ready to get in there. Go ahead, get in there.
I am not. I'm watching everybody.
when you hear like that, you're ready.
So if we're still talking about unheard, men feeling unheard versus women feeling criticized, I think a good starting point would be to always remember that the goal is the same. If you're working towards bettering the relationship, and you can remind yourself before getting into any type of conversation that you guys are on the same team, like you're playing for the same team and you want a good result for the both of you, I think that kind of can like bring down those barriers, and a man might feel more heard, because the woman might actually give him time to say what he needs to say, knowing that they're both working towards a common goal, and she can listen from ears that are leaning towards that common goal instead of it being projected like at her. But we have to give each other that space, but I think setting an expectation, if it's in a relationship, I think setting that expectation up front that like, okay, we always got to have that common goal, that no matter where we're coming from, we're actually fighting for this relationship. We want each other first. And I think a lot of times people don't feel that secure in the relationship. So that isn't usually put first. And then kind of a lot just comes from fear. I think it just comes from fear.
Yeah, like everybody said on the panel, sounds like we as people have a lot of trust issues and haven't healed from a lot of trauma. Because I mean, some of the easiest things that should be to do is have checks and balances. As far as for And to hear so frequently that, depends on your tone, your tonality, and how you're speaking to me, it seems like we as a people are just on such a defensive guard, and we're just always prepared for battle. Because why does it matter so much of how somebody speaks to you? At some point, somebody might also be going through a bad time or having a bad day. You might just be the person that they need to talk to, and because their tonality isn't up to par, you may just miss everything that could potentially transpire, at that particular point. So, definitely, some things we need to work on as people. We seem to all agree that everybody's demanding respect up front, and and nothing less than that. So, at this particular point, we can bring into the audience. We are at the 40-minute mark. So, and just talk about some of the comments that's in the audience and kind of go around the room. And I'll start first with Elena. It says, well, Gina Lopez, howdy from Fort Worth, and then Michelle. I think that's the key, is the delivery is so very important. So I guess after we all kind of tackled that, if we can go around and maybe other than provide a different perspective on the delivery of trying to give that information, as Daniel mentioned, being the sender, the receiver, and the communication piece. So Yara, if you want to go first, please. About the delivery, we responded to Michelle's comment about it. So very important.
You kind of lost me, honestly. What's the question?
Oh, no worries. I got you, New York. I think it's the key. Delivery is so very important. We're just engaging with the audience at this particular point in time.
I think that's the key, is that delivery is yes, the delivery is very important. The timing, the tone, all of that, I feel like it plays a role into whatever is being said, whatever feedback, whatever constructive criticism, and again, like I said before, it should also be honest but respectful and thoughtful, because at the same time, you don't know what you can trigger to the person who's receiving it, right? If you don't know the person well. So yeah, absolutely. The tone, the timing, even the facial expressions plays a role.
So you said everybody, you need to have all of that stuff in check before engaging in the conversation, or?
I mean, you might not even realize that, right? Because sometimes I say something in my face is sort of something different, but just answer the question. It just naturally should be, respectful, the timing, the tone, and all of that, and that your face matches your mouth, what you're saying.
Okay. Gina Lopez says, in my relationship, living with a narcissist, yet being strong-willed, I will be constantly on the defense. Jamaal, what do you have to respond to Gina Lopez's comment?
For one, I want to just thank you for your transparency and vulnerability in a space like this to unearth something like that. And two, narcissism is actually a serious psychological disorder. I'm really careful. I know especially in 2020, when everything went online and we were all engaging, people were just, I call it the other N word. We're not going to go there. But people were just using that word left and like somebody disagreed with them, they're a narcissist. I'm like, that's an actual psychological disorder that has serious ramifications. So, and all of us, I'm going to say this, and this may not go well with some people who have been in relationships, whether male or female, with a narcissist, but each one of us has differing levels of narcissism within us. Boom. Yes, I said it. There's that narcissism within that need to be needed, that need to be used, that need to be heard, that need to be the one depended on. So each one of us has different levels, but some of people, for those where it's a disorder, a psychological disorder, they're almost, I dare to say, immune to confrontation. You can confront them on anything. You can give them feedback. It literally will go right over their head because their brain is not processing on the same frequency as the natural brain. They have a completely different flow from their hippocampus to their prefrontal cortex. So the reasoning does not connect. And so being in that type of relationship with someone like that, one, I would ask myself and others here, during the vetting season, what type of questions were you asking? There's some bullets that, we are able to dodge, and then some that we can't, because, Chris Rock said it best. For the first 6 months, you are a lot of times dating a person's representative. And some of those things don't come out in the wash. And so I'm not going to shame Gina, But I would say being in that and constantly being on the defense, my prayer is that she is able to find someone, whether a counselor, psychologist, advisor, or coach, who she has a sounding board with, because that can be almost debilitating. I even know a person through one of the speakers bureaus that I work with. He's in a relationship, or was. His ex-wife is a narcissist. And now, thank God, the courts have ruled in his favor. He has the children. She has been physically abusive to him. He has given him multiple black eyes. And so these people are dangerous. And so my prayer for Gina is that she has a safe place or safe places that she can go and process that, and prayerfully move to a place where she's able to take care of herself, because they have children together, they have grandchildren. And narcissists have a way of spinning a web where you see them for what they are, but almost no one else around them can see the darkness that they spew and the black tar that comes out of them. So it makes you feel like you're crazy. But that's often not the case. I actually worked in an organization for a serial narcissist. But the beauty of it is that, baby, 30 of us saw them for what they were, and the walls came crashing down at some point. That doesn't happen in every case. And so in the cases where you can feel alone, please know that you're not alone. And prayerfully, you have at least some way to invest in your own mental health and your own spiritual wellness. That's the extreme case of real narcissism. If that's his diagnosis, that's what it's going to take.
Jessica, tag you it.
Okay. So when I was, kind of prepping for our conversation, it reminded me of a quote, and I wanted to just read it. It says, you don't get to tell people how to love you. You get to choose if you want to participate in the way that they love. What do you guys think about that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think about it?
I mean, I love the quote, and I've kept it with me since I found it back in 2020, which is kind of ironic. And it allowed me to see a new perspective on relationships. And I always said, like, you get to choose the manner in which you wish to experience life. And, and life is a series of decisions that you make, and then, the consequences that come from those decisions. So I think, whether in relationships, for me, that's the ultimate thing, the ultimate goal. And I think you're in various parts of your life, you're in various episodes of awareness, I would say. Various kind of like experiences have kind of, crafted how you see life and your new perspectives. So, I think as we go through the journey, we're, experiencing all kinds of other things. And I think those are factors as to why, why so long, why I won't date, because I want to be as aware and present as I can. And I don't think I'm there yet. But I feel like there's that healthy thing where you're aware enough to know, that you're just not ready, or you will give it to God eventually. But, there's some aspect of, obviously, there has to be some aspect of control there for me. But I just don't want to go into something else until, I don't know, until God says so.
No, I appreciate you saying that, because the question I would ask is, how would that next person prepare for you if you haven't fully healed? And then would that be fair to the next person if you walk in and you're judging them off of previous traumas that you haven't healed from? So great observation and identifying with that. Damien, you want to tap in there, or you want me to go to another question?
Let's do the next question.
Okay. What do you struggle with, giving feedback or receiving?
I think I'm better at receiving feedback, because I'm comfortable. I feel I'm comfortable with who I am. And if I'm not sure how this person is going to react to something, based off my feedback, whether things we've talked about, are they willing, are they open? And if I don't know that about that person, I tend to hold back. I tend to hold back that feedback if I don't know how they're going to receive this, even though I know I have good, even when I do have a good intention, if I'm not sure how they're going to receive it, I'll tend to hold back. So I would say that I'm better at receiving feedback because I tend to try and look at both sides of things. So yeah, I'd have to say receiving feedback would be for me.
So let me ask you a question because you sound pretty confident, and if you know that, has it been a conscious decision not to work on giving feedback?
No, not necessarily. No, because I give too much feedback at work and get in trouble a lot. So
Got it. Self-preservation makes sense to me. Elena, what about you? Are you better at giving or receiving feedback?
Well, I think on that one, it really does depend on the subject matter, because if it's business, I'll give you feedback. I'll tell you something don't make like I'll give you clear feedback from my perspective, and you take with it and do with it what you want. If it's in a different type of environment or a different type of setting, I don't give feedback unless it's been asked. Like I don't feel, unless somebody asks for my opinion or what I think about something, I'm not going to just give it. So I feel like in that aspect, I would probably be on the receiving end. Like you can tell me whatever you want and I'll let it filter and process and take from it what, what it's meant to do. But I think for me, it really just kind of depends on the situation or scenario.
If you think they know what they're talking about or not.
Yes. But yeah, I do come from that place where unless someone asks me my opinion, I don't feel I'm in a position to give it. Like, because I do believe like, hey, everybody do your thing. I'm going to support you. I'm going to be your cheerleader. I'm going to build you up. I'm going to back you up, but it's not up to me to tell you what I think. Like it's your life unless someone asks what I think. But now if we're in business and we're working together, I know they're working with me because they want that feedback. So I will openly give that. But otherwise, I just kind of pipe it. I just roll with it. And if somebody wants to tell me something, if I didn't ask for an opinion, I will just take it as to where it's coming from and see what needs to land on me. So
No, it makes
Can I
perfect.
comment on that real quick?
Go ahead, absolutely, get in there.
Based with Elena said and then what I just previously said, I do believe that there are times when feedback is needed for a good friend. I'm a firm believer that if you have somebody you care about and they need to hear something, they need to hear the truth. I do believe there are times when some feedback needs to be provided. And for me, I prefer, and my friends know, if I need to hear something, I'd rather you tell me something than watch me drown. Because if you watch me drown, I don't consider you a good friend. I'd rather you give me the hard truth if I need to hear the hard truth. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I feel it is needed, even when it is uncomfortable. But like you said, Elena, then from there you take what you will from it. And if you want to hear more from it, great. If you don't, and you need to back off, I will back off. But at least I feel I did my part to try and be a good friend.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and that goes back to the conversation piece. Because again, if we're friends and you don't tell me that, then how the hell am I supposed to know that? So yeah, that's definitely important. Jessica, go ahead.
I don't know. Yeah, it depends on the situation, and it really depends on in what capacity. If I'm talking to friends or if I'm in my career, because with my career, I love being able to go back and forth with my students. So I'm constantly giving feedback to my students because I was intentional when I went back to higher ed and I became an academic advisor because I felt like I was ready. You know what I mean? It was like I've had all these different, roles, all kinds of different roles, but I wanted to get back to that communication part. So when I'm interacting with my students, even today, I had a really deep conversation with a student that came in, and he was having trouble with his mental health, and all of that, and I feel like I've invited it into my energy, with the role, and I love being able to give feedback, and I know whether or not they're open or not to be receptive of whatever it is that I have, just whatever that comes from me, and I love feedback as well. I mean, it's always a give and take with my students and myself. Feedback from family is different because of the dynamic that I grew up in. So it really just depends. It depends on who I'm talking to.
Yara, I see you want to jump in there.
Yes, I agree with what's been said. It's depending of who and the scenario, the situation, the capacity, right? Like Damien said, if you my friend, like close friend, and you see me drowning and you're not gonna say anything, just let me drown. What kind of friend are you, right? Just give it to me straight. If you're gonna give me a feedback, give it to me straight, even if it hurts, and we'll take it from there, right? The same way, I will give you a feedback, no filter, embrace our impact because we have that relationship and that trust, and we know how we roll. Now, if we are in business or something else, it's just depending who and how. Now you need to be careful how you give it or receive it or whatnot. But other than that, like Elena said, if you don't ask me, I'm not gonna give it to you because it's not. I feel like it's not in my place, right? But if you ask me, then absolutely. And it's funny because a lot of people come to me for feedback because they tell me that I'm brutally honest and I just have no filter giving feedback. But if you ask me, then you're asking me for a reason, right? So it just depends.
Okay, Jamaal, let's go. Bring us home on this one.
Got it. I want to approach this holistically. I do like how Jessica affirmed it depends on the situation and the scenario and circumstance. I do like what Elena said. If you don't ask, I don't offer. I do think there's a place for, I like to call it the ministry of presence. Like when my dad died, it wasn't a whole lot of advice I was asking for. I just needed someone just to be there, just even to be in the same room without saying anything. Especially if they had both of their parents, I don't want to hear anything from you. Just keep your mouth shut. However, in certain situations, I love the way Damien said, you think about just, we know everyday people, but think about the celebrities who have large influences and platforms, and the people who probably were afraid. They saw the drugs, they saw the adultery, they saw the pornography, they saw the money laundering, and they never said a thing. And these are people who are in the public eye. Think about what happens with those who aren't in the public eye. And so if you see someone drowning and you don't say anything, that blood's on your hands. And so I think there's a way to give it. There's even a proverb that says there's a word spoken in due season. How good is it? And when you discern how to speak those words, I think you can approach things correctly. Jamaal, as you know, I tend to be very brutally honest. And I've won speaking competitions with 2 minutes of preparation against book authors that have been writing books for years. So I have the gift of words, but an unguarded strength is a double weakness. I can break people very easily with my words. So I'm careful giving feedback because I realize if I say something the wrong way, just the tonality, the inflection, the frequency of my voice can break something in them that could leave damage for years. And so I'm careful, even when people ask me for feedback. That's part of my job as an advisor, mentor, executive coach. It's like, how do I say this in a way that's redemptive and not destructive? So really being discerning, being wise, and also using discretion, I think is very key in feedback.
Well said. Hey, so around the room, we'll take this 60 seconds. We'll start with Elena. In one sentence, what's the biggest thing people need to understand about ego versus growth?
I think ego isn't always a bad thing. I think ego is a way for you to measure your own accomplishments, and you should be proud of things, and that can show up as ego. So I think it's being conceited and just overly like overly confident, or not even confident, but just arrogant. I think being in that way gets confused with ego, because ego can be a measure of your own growth, and you shouldn't be afraid of it. It's when you use it in an arrogant, putting somebody else, boastful type of way that it is kind of taken like negatively. So I don't think ego has to be a bad thing. I think it depends on how you choose to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. So ego is a great thing. Ego is what makes you bust through those glass ceilings. Ego is what makes you strive to become a better person and do the things that everybody else can't do. It's just checking said ego. So those are the things that are important. Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, there's a balance to everything. There's a balance to your health. There's a balance to your emotions, how you express yourself. I mean, all of the things. So if you have a healthy balance between the two, you can use them both to your advantage in any scenario that you're in.
Giara?
Yeah, I agree. It has to be a balance, right? And I think that we all have a level of ego, right? It's just depending how we use it and whatnot, because there could be ego that is just the one that always wants to be right. But it's just depending, right? And growth is more like wanting to get it right between each other in the relationship. So it's just having a balance between the two.
Absolutely. Jamaal, go ahead.
I'm gonna be the bad guy and actually gonna shatter this whole ego is a good thing. Not that it's not, but in some cases, I think for the way a lot of our psychology can work, there's an acronym I use for ego. It means to edge God out, and when you edge God out, you will not grow in any facet. I don't care who you are, because you're left to your own devices. You're left to your own thoughts. You're left to your own psychology, which can be very dangerous. I think as an entrepreneur, there's no W-2 workers here in this household. So if I don't work and don't have a certain amount of delusion, for lack of better rhetoric, we don't eat, so you have to have a certain amount of belief, like, okay, I can do this. But if there's too much ego, I can burn out very quickly. I can mow people down. I will not be considered in my interactions or my inner actions. So to edge God out, I think it's a dangerous place. There's a balance, but I like to say there should be rhythms, psychological rhythms that put you in a healthy place. Too much ego is not good for anybody. So I'll be the bad guy and I'll take it.
Damien, get us out of here. Oh, go ahead, Jessica. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just said I love that. I love that.
Hello to the back.
I'm sorry. I love what Elena said earlier about, when two people realize that, hey, we're a team. And if we can see that we're a team and we're not going to be defensive, I think when two people's egos work together as a team, they can grow together. And I think that's the goal of a relationship, working together. And I think that'll help both egos when they know that, where they come from a good place, when it comes from feedback, and both can listen to listen and not listen to respond.
No, I agree. Like everybody else said, balance, everything in duality. You got to have both. So definitely keeping that in mind in that team concept. Elena, you got any last words before we wrap up and get up out of here?
Well, I put a little question in here because I generally think feedback is based on somebody asking something. Isn't that what giving feedback is? Because somebody asked you for like your thoughts on it. So to me, when I mentioned, like, I won't just give my opinion thinking in that realm of feedback. To me, I always just feel like you're always asking somebody, do you got any feedback on this, or what's your feedback? So that's just the ending thought. But as far as this conversation tonight, I think has been amazing. I think we need to dive in deeper. I think there's not enough time to get warmed up and comfortable to really get in there. But I think what you're doing is awesome. And I look forward to watching you do this more and more and more and more.
All right. So does anybody have any feedback for me? Damien?
No, Elena said it already. I love what you're doing and look forward to more.
All right. Jamaal?
Always respect for my namesake. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
Jessica.
This was wonderful. I'm so grateful that I got to be part of the panel.
Hey, glad you were here. And Yara, any last words?
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. This was great. And I really do hope that you do it again with other panelists because this conversation is really deep. So
No, absolutely. And we'd like to thank Gina Lopez for all the entertaining comments out there. Just one thing to everybody, growth requires honesty, but honesty without humility becomes ego. And ego will always protect what growth is trying to change. This is Silent No More, and the conversation doesn't have to end here. If you want to be part of the future panels, drop panel, follow, subscribe, and share this conversation. Enjoy the rest of the evenings.
No more, I'm done fighting this war. What I feel in weakness is something worth fighting for. Silent, no more, I'm unlocking the door. If strength is being honest, then I'm stronger than before.